We own. It is episode 61. This is the Lyrical Ones podcast. We are back. I am appreciative and patient. Alfluent, how are you doing this evening?
The price went up, as they say on this free podcast. But after a good day in your profession, in your vocation, you can justify, you know, getting paid for what you've prepared for. It's like if I got 10 years of education, I got 30 years of education and expertise and experience, and I put that on display. I publish it for people to see on a large scale. It gets reposted, shared, retweeted. The spread is wide. Just feeling like Jadakiss a little bit. Feeling good about what I'm doing in the world. Look back, might have more years behind me that I got in front of me and what I'm doing. But that's it. Just feeling like and I feel like people don't talk about how Jeezy and Jadakiss and Al Harrington um, represent my favorite pizza eating turtles. Um, but you know, it's a good day. How you
I
feeling
mean,
today?
you say that, and the thing is like, okay, you doing out here, so my third person, which it does change, but I'm like Mike Jones,
True, true.
like you know
Mike
what I'm
Mike
saying?
Jones Mike Jones is a solid Raphael.
Solid, like don't get it twisted out here. Like they say, all the best turtles in the know, but remember the one that could turn up. Don't ever, don't ever forget the one that could turn up. Who raising is Raphael? I'm just saying. But yeah, I'm you- picking backing off of what you said, leapfrogging off what you said, right? In that expertise, that experience, and that ability to display your talents and your abilities through your vocation. Like I'm feeling that because as I often critique and I am very critical of the role that I hold within the vocations that I am responsible to, for, and I hold myself accountable to be in. I do take pride and joy in the work that I do, and I do appreciate the people that I work with, as difficult as it may be. Right, I can take a firm stand of respect, and I hold firm boundaries, of course. But it has been a challenging time as we are going through this kind of I would say new school year. Right, I work in alignment and close to schools, and I'm seeing people who are trying to navigate their emotions and their feelings and concerns, their health, right? And the difficulties of some who sit in positions where they're like, let's get back to what it was, right? We're gonna operate how it was. And it's like there ain't none of that. There ain't none of that. I've said this many times to many people. I was like, slavery was normal. It was at one point.
Ouch.
So what are you saying about getting back to normal? Because what was normal after being removed and taken away and reflecting, having time to process everything that was going on, you start to realize there's a lot of toxic aspects. You start to realize that there's a lot of things that you can no longer tolerate because time has shown you, right? They say hindsight is 2020, which means for those that can't understand, when you can reflect and look back, you sometimes see way more detail in what it is that was going on in the past because you've had time to process, mature, grow, learn, develop a perspective that can help you see things more clearly. Because sometimes when you're in it, you're just trying to get through it. And once you've gotten through it, then you can actually process what is it that you went through, right? And I think
Right.
that progress and that growth, right, adds to your abilities with that, with whatever your responsibilities are, or whatever your vocation is, or whatever you decide to do day in, day out. I want to extend my compassion and empathy to those that are going through it right now, who are trying to navigate this really murky waters of what is the new era, what will be next, what will happen next. Because yeah, it's, I see it, and I'm gonna just say straight up, like, hope you can weather the storm. Better get your umbrella. Better get
That's
your umbrella.
that's it. Because there's not any. It's only the illusion of control, just because the way the country's set up, the country's not set up for people to conform, and so you have to present like credible evidence that what what people need to do to protect themselves and protect each other makes sense. And right now, they are not making sense. They're not making it make sense. And that's the challenging part, because whether right we're in one boat or the other, right, we're all part of the trial together. And what they thought they could prevent, right, they found out, oh, we can't prevent that. And it's basically back to the drawing board. The same way you said, well, we thought we could keep people inside. We thought people would keep people, dressed a certain way, wearing a certain accessories over their facial hair. Thought we could get them wearing certain things, and they found out, oh, we can't really get folks to do that if they don't want to, and that's understandable because that's the country we chose to be in. And the fact that people are finding ways to vilify each other because of their stance on their own personal body uh, is also just like the culture we're living in right now. And like it's understandable still. Right? I see the sides, and I just would like for folks to not be screaming at each other. But I know why they're screaming is because they are often in survival mode, and they are overwhelmed in ways that they didn't know they could be overwhelmed, and they don't understand the stress that they're under because they're busy projecting and deflecting away from what's actually happening internally. You know,
Shout out to my Twitter. Shout out to Sineo, Sineo, SFC, for those that know, don't know, but like to know. Because you brought up a valuable point, right? Not wanting to hear each other scream, right? Not wanting to hear each other scream at each other. Um, the thing that I said was compassion and empathy, extending my compassion and empathy because I see both sides of the equation, right? And you have brought up, right, make it make sense. And what I have echoed time and time again is we have to repair the relationships. We have to repair the harm that was done. If we're not going to address the harm, right, then I would like people to group certain things with what I want you to do, right, with all the other things I would want you to do, right? Because there's a lot of things I would want to happen or would like to see. And unfortunately, they've been put on a parking lot. They've been put on a list of we'll get to it or to dos when the time is right. And the thing more than ever that is prevalent, that is in my face, is the damage that has been done when it comes to the relationship people have. Right now, I'm not gonna put it. I'm not right now. What I'm not gonna do, right, is I'm gonna not label the people, right, other than label us here in this country, right,
us.
together, regardless of what you
Love
look
that
like,
movie.
right? Us, regardless of what you look like or where you come from. If you're here, especially here, even around the world, we're seeing the protests, we're seeing the uprising of people who are speaking out. And I can only speak to my experience, which is I know there's a lot of distrust, there's a lack of faith, there's a damaged relationship that needs to be repaired. And if we're not going to add that to the forefront of what people see as necessary, right? People will say, "Oh, we need you to do this," but we don't really take into account what those people were asking for them to do. Like, we need you to do this, but they've been asking people for so long, "I need you to do this," right?
Right.
So we have one group who's now trying to tell another group, "We need you to do this," whereas that other group has been asking for so long, "We need you to do this," but you never did it. Now I don't trust you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. You can't force me or tell me what to do because I've asked of you. And what have you given me in return? Now you want to acknowledge me after you've ignored me, right? We can draw the lines and numbers. And, there's a number going around of 90 million. Whew, that's a lot. 90 million. But what is that saying? That's saying that there's a bunch of people, regardless of where they come from, or maybe the ties that bind them, they're still people.
Yep.
And they do not have faith. They do not have trust. They don't have a relationship with this other thing. And I'm hearing these very just disrespectful things, right? This was a concern of mine, right? That of course this is murky waters, and it's not to materialize a solution. It's just for people to have the acknowledgement, awareness, and hopefully the agency. That's the thing that I really want to be clear. You got to make a decision, right?
Right.
Because people are trying to make decisions for you and they're not giving you the most detail oriented, transparent, most upfront, like, scope of what's going on. They're giving you what they feel is necessary or what they feel like is the most universal. But again, we are a country of individuals, right? We have prided ourselves on our individualism as much as we've prided ourselves on our communities, as many as there are, right? And I'm saying that to say that we got to repair those damaged relationships. We got to think about, in the damage, in the repair, me as a person, what am I going to do to ensure my safety, my not just comfort, but my safety? Because there was a situation where they were saying, and I'm gonna leave out a lot of details, but you'll get the scope as I dive into it. Imagine this. Riddle me this, Batman.
Mm.
There's a situation where you could be vaccinated, asymptomatic, and as information is released, right, people are hearing there's a potential for you to be a vaxxed asymptomatic person and pass and transmit to others at such a higher frequency and rate, given that we have this new variant, right? And that information is coming from one area, right? But what happens when your job doesn't even use that information, or it isn't being incorporated or acknowledged, or it isn't being included in the conversation of what we're getting ready to do? Because there are people who are uncomfortable, right? There's
Right.
people who are unvaxxed or vaxxed that are uncomfortable because this now we're moving into an era. I'm seeing the memes all day, right? My fall plans, and now Delta, right?
Mm.
This is the reality, and people are acknowledging that the new norm now is to be flexible. The new norm now is to pivot, and the new norm now, I am suggesting, is taking agency and ownership over what you need to do, regardless of what you're being told by others, because your safety and your health is paramount. It comes first.
Every
And
time.
I'm not going to be the one to permeate or push or persuade, because because I've experienced it myself. I have a damaged relationship with the healthcare system. I have a damaged relationship with the government. I have a damaged relationship with politics and the legal aspects of the law. And so when all these things are coming together, especially economics and capitalism and the workforce, when all these things are now intertwined and they're echoing this message, regardless of whether or not I do it, because I did do it. I got it. I got the microchip. They gonna my head gonna explode one of these days. Y'all gonna see. Y'all be like, see, I told you. They got him. But I'm being upfront. I empathize with everybody who may not have taken that risk, right? As you said, we're all taking chances. It's just what chance do you surmise, right?
That's it.
I put a bet on. I'm gonna be very honest. I did it because I didn't want to hear about it. I wanted to make moves and do what I needed to do through this system so I could be the person that is here to speak, but also do that in other capacities because it does grant me access. And it's like, oh, look at you, you compromise. I've made many compromises, and this is the one that I was comfortable with making. I'm not saying you have to be.
Not at
Critique
all.
me by all means. Let
Please
me
do.
be the one to have that discourse with you because I'm not going to disrespect you for having your passion or your concerns or your vision of what happened in this moment, right?
Not at all. Not ever.
But that's the thing, right? Is like most people aren't coming from that. I've seen the discourse and the commentary and the almost elitism in this where it's like, well, it's the right thing to do. You know what's the right thing to do? The right thing to do is to end poverty. The right thing to do is we have an overabundance of resources that go to waste every day.
We could have put food in them tents and lined people up instead of handing out this. We could have been passing out paleo. We could have been passing out keto. We could have been passing out any any dietary parameters. We could have been passing out food in tents for 18 months instead of a stimulus. We could have
I
fed
mean,
people and let them save money.
there's so many layers even to that.
The
What we should have did,
drive-through
right?
to get a shot, to get your nose swiped, to get your brain scraped. You could have at least handed me some chicken and then send me on my way, so at least I have a meal after my my eyes is tearing up and my eyes is red and my nose is running because you didn't scrape my brain and gave me a lobotomy. Could have passed me a bag of apples. You could have
Yeah.
lined people. How many people would be lined up, housed or unhoused, would have been lined up for like essentials when it comes to just when you just think paleo, like stuff I ain't gotta I stuff just give me some stuff that I ain't gotta cook. Just give me some stuff that's ready to eat that came from the earth. How many people would have been like less obese coming out of stepping outside for the first time because you wanted to line people up in cars, have them drive through and give them some produce. Walk through, make an appointment 2 weeks in advance to get some produce. It seems like they got a system. They figured out a system real quick on how to do that, and they had enough money because in California they had enough money to pay people for being at home.
I mean, as you sip on some water, right? Because
It's water. It ain't tea.
the thing that you highlight, right, is that the shoulda, the wouldas, and the wants, right? People have
Still
wants,
able. We
right?
could do it now.
We could do it now. We could. There's some, but that again, that introduces many ideas, right? That introduces, right, what I like to call the catch-all, right? Schools are the catch-all. Kids got to be there, and everybody pushes and forces. And the
They
thing
ain't gotta
is,
be there. They gotta be together. They gotta spend time together, but they ain't gotta be
yes,
there.
exactly, right. And the way that we've allowed and enabled society to exist is that's the mindset, right? Is that they need to be there, right? That there's no other space for them other than that, right? If we were to
Exactly.
talk
The
about
prison.
if we were to talk about childcare, right, and the void of childcare, right, the non-existence of childcare, yet we will mandate and create orders of what needs to happen and what we want you to do. We want you to do this thing, right? But for years I've worked in the community, and I've always had my asks and my wants, and it's always been disregarded or minimized or invalidated because it doesn't fit within our goals, or it doesn't fit within what we have access to, right? And accessibility, I think, is so key right now. Accessibility is this broad word that can mean anything from disabilities to the lack of having, right?
Right.
And when you bring up, right, how can we address something as hunger, right? That is we have our food banks, but even then, the level of access and the culture that we've developed around that, right, is one where, again, if we don't repair the relationships, those things aren't accessible, right? We will do everything to compartmentalize mental health, but then not take into account that me saying everything I'm saying is going to take your mind the ability to comprehend and decipher and have the ability to pay attention long enough to even know what the heck am I talking about, right? Your mental health applies as much as the choices that you make day to day, as much as the relationships you have, and what you decide to do with your time. Your mind is going to be the determining factor in all that, right? But when it comes to stress, that's when it's mental health. Not when it comes to the levels or the access to McDonald's within my neighborhood, right? Not when it comes to what's being offered at my corner store
What's
or what's
really
being
making me
advertised,
crazy?
right?
What is really driving me wild? That I don't know what to eat because what's close to me ain't good for me. It's because I don't know what to do because what's been close to me ain't been good for me, and it ain't commercials, it ain't it ain't remixes of Back That Thing Up telling me what I should eat, but they could have literally they could all the stuff I'm filling out telling me, do you ever had an allergy to this? You ever had an allergy to that? You ever been worried about this medicine? You ever had this vaccine? You ever had this something? Did you have something recently? You could have asked me about my activity and my daily energy expenditure per week and put some food together for me. So when I show up on my appointment, you giving me food that I'm not allergic to. That's go help me out. That's not gonna be 2,000 calories. That's gonna be what I need
Tailored to me.
at least. And then you say, here's the list because we got experts. Here's the list because we paid experts here, and now we'll give you this every every other week. You'll give me $1,400. If my groceries is $100 a week, then you could afford to give me groceries for the week for 18 months.
The game and how it goes, right? The
They
game and
they
how it's
could have made
played.
folks not susceptible. Folks, everybody who's susceptible to this virus, we could have just gave you all the nutrition you needed so you're not susceptible to this virus. Come on, buddy.
Look, I might not have it now, but I just got me a check. I'm gonna walk it like I talk and say it how I play it.
That's
Teach it like
that's
I preach. Now put that in
that's
your
it.
head. The thing is, right? I'm again leading with compassion and empathy, right?
Yes.
Leading with compassion and empathy, because the thing is, I don't see enough of it right now. I don't see enough of it where we making the distinctions and determinations of who's human anymore, right? We just going after titles and what team you belong to. We've ignored and we've gone far away from being human, right? Seeing that there may be a need or a cause or a want. I heard a conversation between two individuals who sit on two different ends of a spectrum in the political world that we live in the United States, and one of them was speaking based out of pure facts and experience, and another was speaking out of experience but using a lot more exaggeration and
Mm.
deflecting to try and address the same issue. Now, I'm not going to say who, and I'm not going to say what side of the aisle they sat on, but in that moment, my compassion and my empathy was for the person who's stating facts and going through their experience. man, like I feel for you because in this moment, people rather laugh and ridicule you to dismiss what you say than to acknowledge that you have any real truth or value in the discussion. Right. And then looking at the other individual, I was like, wow, I feel for you because you've come to realize this is the only means that you can get your point across is to be very dismissive and play to the humor instead of doubling down on what is the actual truth so we can come to a commonality because you understand that the divisive nature we currently live in is way more fruitful because it's easy, right? And I'm like, I feel for both of you as men, as individuals, as people. I feel for you because this is the world we live in, right? I'm the mask, as I said before we got on air, it's a filter. This is a filter. This how do you get people to really pay attention? You do something that makes them uncomfortable, and if they decide to stay, they must have really wanted to hear what you had to say, right? Because it ain't about how I fit within your Eurocentric or Afrocentric scope of beauty standards. It isn't about how well I play into anything. Nah, I'm a juxtapose and be against and antagonize all of that because I grew up in a society that has prayed and put people on pedestals. And now it's like, if you really care enough, or as I say in a song, if you love you like I love me, then you'll understand what I'm trying to say, right? Because
Right.
the thing is, I love myself. I love myself enough to want to share my love with others, right? But I love myself first because I got to pour into me before I can start to pour into others, right? I have to make sure that I'm fed before I can feed others because I don't have an infinite resource or infinite energy, right? I have to be mindful of that because then if I'm able to show and reflect that, others will do the same because it's not happening, right? Compassion and empathy means I have to be compassionate towards me and really pay attention to myself so that way I can share and care for others, right? It's not this thing where, oh, you put your neck on the line and you no longer taking care of yourself. Yes, at times I have been in those situations. I've been in those predicaments. Trust me, I have. I've been the one to be like, I ain't got $1 because I gave my last one to you, right? But now I'm like, nah, get with some people, learn some investment strategies. I could give you $1 because I got plenty more, right? I learned how to navigate and use, right? It's not abuse, it's not misuse, right?
Right.
It's use. And I think that in the compassion and empathy realm, and using and leading with that, I can hear people and see the pain. I can hear people and see where's the struggle. And I can see that it's not about me trying to invalidate and minimize, but it's me trying to, as I've done many times with guests, uplift, get
Right.
to know, and praise. Right.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what I'm hoping can happen because right now people is man crazy with how they getting disrespectful over this.
It's really like, but it's like profit margins though, right? They look at their overheads, like what is going to cost me energetically, and it's like how can I benefit the most from this, and right, so either I right exaggerate before I tell right as I tell the truth, right as I use facts and I exaggerate and embellish, right, or right I just give the truth according to what research and data say, and maybe I'm not selling it, right? Maybe I'm handing it out for free. So, you know, with the least amount of overhead, with the hope that it benefits somebody. But when I'm selling it, then people was eating it up and they can't wait to buy it. Even though it's not exactly all truth, but because I'm selling it, it's more appealing than what's free. Like the food bank, right? It's like food banks always there. They got their days in their neighborhoods and their zip codes, and they're doing a lot, and it helps so many people. And people like if you got a grandparent who can pick it up and then cook for you, then they probably saving you money and helping you get to college too. Um, and so, cherish those folks because they know what the deal is, and they know that the system can be worked even if it's not working for you, um, because the system won't teach you what you should eat. So you got to take the knowledge from the grandparents who gonna cook for you and and make for you what their ancestors taught them. And the system won't teach you how to keep your money. The system will tell you to go to the store and buy it. And the grandparents will say, "We came here because they got systems in place. If you get a green card, if you get citizenship, you can get food. If you got an address, that's why I'm not outside. That's why I'm not homeless. That's why I ain't got a tent. That's why we work so hard to get one house to put everybody in it, because we can go pick up food from that house for that house. And the system won't teach you how to keep your money. The system will tell you how to get rid of it. The system will present in an infinite amount of ways for you to let go of yours.
Yeah.
Eat while giving you infinite amount of ways to make more. But it's really like infinite amount of ways to make more, or we gonna keep about 80% of them on the other side of this door. And so that 20% that you got to work with, we only go present them to you if you go so far. Like if you jump through these hoops of getting a high school diploma or a GED, you can have these 20% of jobs. Or if you learn a trade, you could be a part of to get this 20% of jobs. But if you can't do that, then all you can do is use somebody else's money, which the system is also giving people opportunity to do. But if we learn how to budget from the folks who did it before us, who taught us who maybe wasn't great at teaching it because the distractions of the system presented so many ways for people to let go of their money, right? Because it's really not about like the money, it's the mindset that it presents, is that people running out, and they only running out because they're not saving it, and they are only not saving it because they think more is coming, and they think more is coming because there's an infinite amount of ways presented to them, but it's not an infinite amount of ways accessible to them. And so all they
That's
see is what's it. Go ahead.
no, I was just saying, like, you right. Like, it is a thing, like
See but
speaking
don't
to it,
touch.
right?
Look but don't touch.
Look but don't touch, right? And more importantly, you're right. This almost goes right back to the beginning of the conversation where I said, as much as I critique it, doesn't mean I can't appreciate it, right? Because
The
the thing
gaffle.
is, it's a weird, if you don't have context, or if you like, oh man, let me zoom all the way out now, because you have said something too that also triggered the response of like, yeah, if you have the means to get access to those things, right? And that's not to invalidate people who can't get access to those things, right? If you can't get access to housing, if you can't get access to citizenship or a green card or any type of work visa, if you can't get access to that, you really have to do a self-assessment of what you got access to, because there's
Right.
access to something, right? And that's
Right.
a very hard thing for people to
How do you critical?
conceptualize.
How do you critical think
How do
when you
you
don't when you when
critically
you
think?
don't when you don't got access? Who's right? How do you like? How where are the street smarts that help you shift mentalities when you're in survival mode? What is street smarts gonna do but help you navigate where you are already? How is street smarts gonna help you get somewhere else when they're designed to help you what you're learning, your skill set, everything that you develop is to help you navigate where you are, right? There's no where's the skill set, where do you acquire the skill set, right? What dungeon do you go to, right? What floor do you go to level up to go to the to level 4? Like where is the prep, right? And if there's not enough programs to capture people, say, hey, we gonna help you level up, right? I'm gonna put you in this Pokeball and train you, right? Regardless of your age, if you right, you like, I can't get free food if I don't have an address, because I can't get food from the food bank if I ain't got an address, like straight up.
Yeah.
And like, it's really hard for me to say, oh, I want to work when I'm hungry. Now I want to eat. I don't want to work.
Or it's really hard for me to work when I'm not visually societally acceptable, right? When I don't meet or hit the standards of what you see as acceptable, right? If I don't have the means of communication that you deem as, it's like, oh, it's too much to go back into the past. It's too much to say, could you please meet with me tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Because you don't have a phone, you don't have an ability to check your email. It's too much of an inconvenience for me to schedule with you, to have a face-to-face conversation, to even say, you know what, maybe your aroma isn't the best, maybe your appearance isn't the best, and that's not your fault, but you took a chance to come here, so I'm going to take a chance and see what resources I have available or what referrals I can make to say, let's get you in position to make a win, right?
Because I got the internet and I can search for where the shower services are. I can search for where the food banks are. You could use the company address if you want to get food.
I'll be willing to leverage all of that.
My resources to help you level up, because I see that you want to, because you have displayed a desire to do so, because you have shifted, right? You have done what you could to navigate and
Oh, hold
survive
on. You gotta be
your
careful. You
environment.
gotta be careful. I know you're wearing the glasses. But you gotta be careful because now you're talking about solutions, and you black. You gotta watch out. Okay,
That's why
because
I just
we're
wear the glasses
because
so I don't get
remember,
shot.
we didn't say nothing. We didn't say nothing about what the person looked like. We just said there's this underlying factor that may bind us all. Maybe it's called poverty, right? I remember there was a guy who was like,
We
he
ain't
was
said
all
nothing
about
about what
civil
somebody look
rights,
like.
right? And he was like, oh, this is about poor people, right? And then they was like, oh, it's about poor people. Oh, so y'all mean exactly, right? Now you create
what,
solutions because we just
what you doing on
identified
that balcony? What you doing up
what
there?
you doing on that balcony? What you got going on up there? Why they? Oh,
Get
okay,
get down from there.
get down,
Get
right?
down
Get
from
down and
there.
stay down, right? Because here we
Oh,
are
you waking
now.
up in the hospital? Get back down.
We got to push you back down, right? And that's the thing is that like having that compassion and empathy opens that door for exploration for us to even have the solution, right? To see that there's the chance, the possibility, the opportunity for something more for anyone, right? Because it's not to minimize and invalidate the frustration. It's not to take away from the taxation or the feelings or the toll that it will take on you, because it will. It does it to me. It's done it to my family. I've lost many family members due to how the system and the many systems within it are set up, right? I'm speaking from experience of my own grief, my own loss, my own pain, my own Kanye West going through Majora's Mask. I've gone through it time and time again to
The clock
understand the
tower.
pain. Yep, exactly. Right. To then, if you didn't get the references, I mean, come on, Kanye is the walking embodiment of grief, and then Majora's Mask was a metaphor on grief. And I'm just saying, when you a geek and you like hip hop, you got to make those pop culture references from time to time. But going back into the point, right? Grief, right? The pain, right? The agonizing factors that we all experience that pull us down. And I have to have the anime approach to grab my fist and clench it with a smile to say, you can get through it, that I believe that you can overcome it, that I have conviction, not because it sounds good and it makes you comfortable, but because I have experienced it and done it and continue to do it time and time again myself, right? To know it's real, to know it's true, to know you can do it too.
why do I spend 17, 18 years of my life not learning about taxes? So that taxes then become this thing that's completely foreign to me as I then have to work. And if I'm lucky, I'm also not being prepared to get a job to work in those 17 years because my parents care enough about me to work into the evening. My parents care enough about me to have food on the table. My parents are, I'm lucky enough to have parents who who want to see me smile. So they may not have time to teach me what I'm gonna need as I jump through these hoops to get a high school diploma and get a GED. But when I get those things, I'm then supposed to know what to do with my taxes because there's some some magical knowledge that I'm supposed to come into possession of at some point. And it's wild to me because Wesley Snipes like can act, but he can't act like he knows how to do his taxes. And why is it an insurmountable idea, or the idea of doing the taxes insurmountable unless it's foreign? If it's like a foreign country or a foreign language, it makes sense that people will be apprehensive. It makes sense that poor people will be even more apprehensive because you say, oh, make the money. Oh, but make sure you give some back. And then, even though we know how much you made, tell us how much you made so we can decide if you should give more back.
I mean, you bring up a lot of good points. Because it is a thing, right? Because what you said that hit me was if I was lucky enough to have parents, and what it opens the door is depending on how much luck, it also determines how much of a deficit, right? The more
Mm,
luck you have, the less of a deficit you have. But if you have some luck, that don't mean that you absolve from being in a deficit, right? Because you could have parents but they cannot be there, right? You can have parents provide you with a meal, but not be present to fill your heart, right? You could have and not have, right? And that's the thing that the compassion and empathy again, right? Recognizing where those underlying currents are, where it's like didn't have parents, right? Had a parent, right? Had food, had no food, right? Had school, had a teacher they could trust, right? Because it's not the same for everybody. It's not to invalidate one for the other, it's to say, how can I see it all? And then for you, how can you find that one thing in it all? Right? Because there
right.
is that one thing. Hopefully, I'm praying, right? Because there are some people who are truly unlucky, and I don't want to refer to them as unlucky, but there are people where they're you could reference any data, any fact, any little part of any, oh, every 10
James
seconds, every
Logan.
5 seconds,
James
every two
Logan is
minutes,
James Logan is the data. Let's just go with his life.
right? You could go through any measure of what unlucky looks like,
That's unlucky life. That's an unlucky life.
man. But that's the thing, right? Is like I have, if you have access to this, then there's a chance that you could have a further open exploration of what the possibilities are to get out of the thing that may be holding you back, holding you down, hurting you, harming you, or putting you in a deficit. Because yes, right now we are experiencing a time where compassion and empathy is at least in my limited perspective, it seems to be at a low. right? As far as the narratives and the messaging and the propulsion of marketing that's going around in media, I am not seeing compassion. I'm seeing division. I'm seeing a lack of unity. I'm seeing a lack of recognition, a lack of respect, right? Because yeah, some of us are lucky enough to be in afforded a position to not even like to just be an antagonist, right? To just be I'm against it. I don't care. It ain't for
Right.
me, right? I'm lucky enough that I ain't got to worry because it ain't going to impact me, and you can't impact me. Cool, it's all good. If you don't, if nothing hits you,
They
God
be
bless.
like that. They be like
It
that.
be like
Straight.
right? But then there's that one part when it does. For some, it
Like
will.
them attitude. Say it again.
No, I was saying there's that one part where it will. There's that one
Yeah.
part where it does, right? Not everyone, but there's some where it's like, it don't hit me today till it hits you tomorrow.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because like if I'm born with a gene that a genetic, you know, abnormality that allows me to regenerate and heal at an accelerated rate, you would say, "Oh man, that's lucky," right? Until I get hurt in front of people and people see that and they say, "Oh, you ain't like us, so we don't like you." Then you say, "Oh, well, we just heard about somebody in this town that is different from everybody and nobody likes them. We could just take them from their parents. Matter of fact, we can just take their parents out, put their parents down, and we just take them. And because they're so lucky, right? You say, oh well, let's see what we can do with this. So we gonna cover your bones in metal, no matter what it feels like. It'll make you indestructible. Ain't that so lucky? Matter of fact, we gonna tamper with your super healing, your super ultra fast healing mind to the point where you don't even remember your parents. And we gonna teach you how to fight. We gonna teach you how to kill. We gonna teach you how to do everything you need to do to defend yourself. And we gonna ask you to use it for us. Ain't that so lucky?
Ain't that so lucky?
And then as you have like nightmares that try to have your brain and your sleep cycle put things back together where they're supposed to be, you start to suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome or disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. And ain't that so lucky?
Ain't that so
And
lucky?
when we go continue to use you until the trauma and harm that you causes harm to you, to where you then say you need to stop doing what you're doing for us. And ain't that lucky? Because we gonna feed you, we gonna teach you how to defend yourself, we gonna make you indestructible, and all that's gonna be great for you as long as you use all that for us. Ain't that so lucky? And so like you could you could start lucky by waking up, but sometimes you can step out into that system and become unlucky real quick.
Yeah, because
And
then they might
it can
have
hit
somebody
home.
waiting for you.
It can hit home, like you said, anytime. And you could be a realtor showing some folks a house, and the neighbors who don't know you call the police on you, say you broke in, had a SWAT team show up, have surround the house, had a police surround the house, and as you who done did your work, said, I'm gonna make this money selling these houses. I'm gonna serve some of the people that look like me and help them find housing. Police gonna call you outside, say, We don't know nothing about your license, but the white people probably, but the neighbors called and said that somebody broke into the house. Three people broke into the house. So we got to put you in these handcuffs because that's what we do. And we appreciate you telling us everything that you've done to, pass your test and get your license. But first, we got to put you in these handcuffs. Oh, I see, you got a client there. Oh, that's his son. Oh, that's cool. But we gonna have to put all y'all in handcuffs right now. Um, and was that? Oh, you are. Let's see your phone. What? You are a realtor? Oh, well, it's your lucky day. We gonna let you go.
It's your lucky day.
It's your lucky day that it wasn't your last day. And if it's not your,
Weren't
and
you
if it's
so
not,
lucky?
if it's not your last day, consider yourself lucky that you get to go through it again. Come on. But sometimes we unlucky, right? And we don't get another day. Sometimes we unlucky and we gotta and we get another day, right? Sometimes it's unlucky. Sometimes we feel real unlucky to wake up again and witness the trauma and experience the harm again, knowing that it ain't good for us, knowing that it ain't right for us, knowing we can't quit because we don't see the next thing coming. We don't know we don't know if that's a stone covered in moss or a lily pad. We can't tell, but we see it as another step possible. But I don't know if I'm gonna be able to keep going if I step there, or if I'm gonna fall into this bog. I ain't used the word bog in a minute, so I had to drop that one time.
Had to let that one go.
Yeah.
Had to let that one be.
Bam. You know.
I mean,
Um,
but you
but it's
right.
some
Like it's that scope of unluckiness, right? And it's like you could get lost in it
who lucky.
because it's like every moment's another minute to add a different value to it, right? Like, is this a value that's of a surplus, or this is a value that is going to take away? And it's not to, like, again, not to minimize, not to take away, but it is to say, what is the chances that you could figure out a way to have it turn into something that adds more value too, right?
Profit margins.
Because it's there, right? And it it may be uncomfortable for people to even explore and even have the conversation about it, but you you're gonna experience a discomfort either way, right? Now, whether or not you develop Stockholm syndrome to the discomfort, the type of discomfort, right? Some discomfort is not necessarily sustainable, or it's sustainable, but it may lead to various forms of harm, right? You have to determine those things. But I don't want anyone to lose sight of their own sense of personal agency, of their own sense of figuring out what they need to do for themselves amongst the greater scope of things, because I don't want to be nihilistic, but it's easy to. And I tend to go towards the things that are difficult. And in this difficult thought, right? If it's up to me to resolve that people are comfortable in their own discomfort, if people are truly at home with their own sense of displeasure, because it's easy to complain, it's hard to actually take action and do, and I have to accept that, well,
Then they
I'll get
tell
my
them to see
rocking.
me.
Gotta lift that weight, maintain your form. But you see, in that, I feel it's going to be a situation where I remove myself, right? Because I don't know, right? I don't know the inner workings compared to what's the actual, like, what are you showing? What are you telling? What are you projecting? What are you giving? Right? Because there's always that internal dialogue. And I think that if anything, right, in this conversation when we're talking about compassion and empathy, of course you have to have it for yourself, but you also have to take into consideration the world around you and how that plays out and how that impacts others. And I think that, as heavy as the weights can be, as heavy as the weight can get, as tiresome as you may get through the reps and the sets, You got to understand, right? Maintaining your form, asking for advice when you're not sure, right? Knowing how to communicate to others to develop that network, right? This might be an analogy, but it is so true, right? If you are trying to change anything, you're not alone. You live in a world where others exist, and you may fail. You may not know what to say. But sometimes you got to start with just asking a person what's the most appropriate thing to say, right?
Mm.
Sometimes you got to really dial it down to what is before the real question. So you can then know how to ask the question, because you might have a desire, you might have a want, you might have a need, but you don't know how to let anyone know, right? And I think
Right.
that right now it's just, when I see the world and the condition that it's in, and I see the messaging and the communication, when I see the fear and the insecurities, I think communication is a baseline that we all need to explore and discover and know how do we engage, because it's
But
not easy.
like you said, right? It's compassion and empathy though, because if we're not communicating with that, right, then we're not even thinking, is this person asking the right question? Right? Is this person trying to change the right thing? Because people will be saying, oh, well, I don't like this about my life. I don't like this about myself. That's not the thing maybe you should be focused on changing. But if you want to change, right, then I will listen to you. If you want to change, right, then I will hear you out with the ear of compassion and empathy, that it may not be for me to fix, but if I have some resources, right, if I have enough time to listen, right, I may have more resources than you have, right? And if not, if I don't got more, I have some, and we can pull them together as you try to figure out what the change is that you need to make, right? In the or change or changes in the order, right, or the sequence that they need to happen in, right, so that you can enjoy the experience instead of just only enjoying the discomfort or latching on to the discomfort as familiar, when you can latch on to, right, progress. You can latch on to love. You can latch on to grace for yourself. You ain't gotta always latch on to work. You ain't always gotta latch on to money. You ain't always gotta latch on to moving forward. You ain't always gotta latch on to the job or the responsibility. We could latch on to caring about ourselves and say, maybe the changes that I need to make revolve around caring for myself more. And if that's the case, maybe I should talk about, what does it look like for me to take care of myself more? It's like, maybe it's not help. Maybe it's, I need to talk about this. Can you listen to me as I process and flesh out the issue so I can begin to address them? And if I'm communicating with compassion and empathy, I'm listening. And then even if I'm sharing my story, I'm mindful that the person who's listening to me is a human and not a suggestion box. And it's not just for me to just dump everything on, but I'm going to try to understand that person enough to where maybe I can be in a position to do the same at some point if they're interested in also making a change. And if they're also interested in making a change, we can both listen to each other. We can both have compassion for each other. And we can say, oh, well, do you know where to look? Well, I don't know where we look either. Then it's an isekai anime, and first we got to go to the town. Then we got to get registered with the Adventurers Guild. Then we got to choose our roles. I need to be a swordsman or archer or mage. What, I, what tools do I have that's possible for me? Right? What skill sets do I have? Well, my awareness is at this level, but my agility is here. So maybe I need to be the scout. And if I need to be the scout, then I got it. Okay, so maybe I got some nimbleness in me, and I can move in ways that you can't move right now because of what's happening in your life. And so if that's the case, maybe I can be in places, for you, and you can't always be for me. Oh, but you got strength and you got magic attack. Come on, bro. We about to make something happen. Because if I tell you where they at, then you can lay them down. And if they chasing me, then they ain't gonna know when you hit them. But if we're not readily listening, then we can't like even acknowledge what's happening. If I got nobody listen to me, like it's gonna be hard to acknowledge what's going on with myself, because I won't ever be fleshing it out. Right? It's like if I'm literally unhoused and I'm like trying to critical think, right? How am I gonna learn it? Because the school ain't gonna teach me that. They gonna teach me how to spit out what they throw at me, what they feed me. Here, tell me what I just told you. Tell it to me again, but then tell it to me like this. Tell it to me in this way. Oh, I don't know you. I know you don't speak like that, but here, speak it this way. Write it this way. Yeah, I know it's English, and I know this ain't this how you, this not how you talk at home. But talk like that while you're here, so that we can make this money. Because really, I just trying to get this funding. Uh, I wonder if we included the students and say, hey, if y'all test good, we get my money. And if we get my money, like we're not gonna give y'all none, but you working for us.
How the game go, how the game get played. Like it's it's best to be mindful when that's the reality. It's best to have that insight to know that yeah, you gotta really think about that. You gotta really take that into account. You gotta really understand that.
Sin, should we start telling the kids that they the ones making the money for the schools
I mean, I feel like
in
they
mass?
they should have they that you see you said in mass, right? I remember a teacher said if only they knew the strength that they have in numbers, right? If only they knew they outnumber us. They become we get we I think about when we in middle school, my peers, we knew we had numbers. We realized it. And what did they do? They changed our classes. They separated us, right? Because it wasn't the whole class. It was just a group of us in a class. Now, if we had the whole class, you can't just get rid of a whole class, right? But they could get rid of a group in a class, right? And why were we disruptive? Why? Because there were needs we had that weren't met. There were issues, there was things that we were trying to deal with or process in the way that it resulted in the behaviors, right? Like I'll never forget a training I did where they said the four common things when a child is disruptive. I was like, I know I got one of those. And I could look back at my behavior and I know friends who had some of those, right? And this is the breakdown. And people were like, nah, that ain't it. That ain't the reason why these kids be bad. And they were like, you look at it, you start to realize it's true. It's so simple, right? It was one of them was who does this youth or this child wish they had a better relationship with in their household? And I'm like, man, like,
Hmm.
okay, I know some people who don't got good relationships in their household. Then it was, who in the household are they witnessing that they want for them to get along that aren't getting along? I'm like, oh, I definitely know that one. I definitely
Hmm.
done seen some people in my household who I wish they had better love for each other, right?
Hmm.
Who are they worried about? Oh, I definitely got people I could worry about. We losing people every other year over here, right? And then the last
Every
one,
every
what
year on my
happened?
saying.
What happened, right? What happened that they're afraid will happen again? And I was like, those four things were the commonalities for students who disrupt classes. So that means there's four needs that aren't being addressed. There's four situations. And I'm like, man, my friends got one of them. I got some of them. And
Right.
here we are disrupting a classroom because those things are going unaddressed and unnoticed, right? We're sitting here trying to break a teacher down, not just because we want to, but because we don't have any other means of expression other than this moment of trying to get some control, right? They always say, oh, don't get into a power struggle with them. What's the power dynamics if we're all on the same page? What's the power if we're unified, right? There's no
Right.
struggle for power, but that's not how it's presented. We're presented as, you're supposed to guide us and you're supposed to lead us and you're supposed to direct us. But if you're not a guide and you're not a leader and you're not a director, right? You're barely a teacher, right? I spend more time here with an adult than I do at home. Yet we don't want to acknowledge that there's a familial tie for me being at school. Can't
Right.
forget how many times I've accidentally called my teacher mom, right?
Whew.
So to sit up here and ignore that, right? On top of what else are you ignoring in my life? Man, I'm about to break you down. Oh, y'all switching my classes? Well, you got me, right? And again, I ain't saying one size fits all, but I do see that there's a lot of commonality in those different things in the way that you process it, right? Your reference point for your culture or for your community or for the practices and the principles that you incorporate in your household will definitely push what you end up doing in the public.
Right. Speaking of principalities and groups being broken up, right? High school, my freshman year, my sophomore year in high school, had a principal who had a system that was organizing us, and not to mobilize us, but so that we could mobilize if we wanted to. And we had a mentality of community. And they fired the principal while the test scores were immaculate, right? They fired the principal while the community was strong. And then I saw the community break down, right? As the system changed, right? I saw the community break down. And as a result of community breakdown, then I saw like abrasiveness within the communities who who started to focus on the differences between each other and not things that they had in common, right? And I saw it. I saw it. Ooh, nice slang word, right? People don't know about that. Saul with the L. When you throw the L at the end, we don't know about that. But I saw the change and I saw it bubble over. I saw it implode almost to where, you know, all that could happen was violence as the expressions and started the opportunities for expression started to diminish and the community started to dissolve. And if we were ever communicating in mass, the information that that the youth don't know they have the right to know, right? We could help them empower themselves just by, like, we always talk about, like, the youth don't have this lived experience, right? And their scope of the world, right, needs to grow. But it's the same for adults, right? It's adults living in boxes all the time, right? It's adults, like, occupying their own cages, cages of trauma, cages of discomfort, cages of Stockholm syndromes, like boxes on cages and inside boxes and inside cages, inside container homes, inside smart cars, and inside Teslas, just folks in boxes, inside Patagonia vests, inside cages, can see the way out, but don't even see it as a way out. They see it as a way down
They see it as a
from.
vulnerability.
They see it as, yeah, as a
They
weakness,
they
like the
they
growth
start to
as a
think they need to
weakness.
cover it up.
Right, the spaces where they need to grow need to be hidden, so they never improve or address those things or heal or grow through those things. And that ain't right.
It ain't right, right? Is it to keep them out or is it to keep us in?
Ooh, Shrek, don't give it to him.
I'm just saying, like, you looking at it, and you're right. People will reinforce their cages. People will reinforce their boxes. My love is limitless, like my abilities are limitless, right? I don't place a limit on it, right? I understand there's a balance. I understand that there's an ebb and flow. I understand that it needs to be reciprocated. I understand I need to feed myself, right? And it's not just in one capacity, it's in many ways. And when I see people who adhere to the limits, right? There's one thing to say a boundary, and there's one thing to say I have a limit within myself of what I will allow. It's another thing to
Right,
say, oh no, that just ain't gonna happen. It won't happen. It can't happen. Why? Because you said so. So because you said so, you've determined for yourself, but you can't determine that for me, right?
right,
And in this limited scope or limited realm of compassion and empathy where it's not in abundance, it's not often being shown, I feel like I have to be limitless with it. I feel like I oftentimes am now identifying with people who I can see their pain where otherwise I would rather see them in disgust. I rather see them in a state of I don't want no part of you, right? I'm now at this place where I can't do nothing but ooze a level of compassion and empathy, not to enable, no, not to enable, but I am very mindful of my tone when I challenge. I'm mindful of what challenge I'm presenting them with because it's not to antagonize them for my joy. It's in hopes that maybe they can see I care, right? Because yes, there's care and challenge, right? We challenge each other in many ways, but it's understanding what does their capacity look like? What does their limits look like? What are their boundaries, right? What are they
right,
struggling with, right? And it's not to say it's flawless, but it's to say that I'm willing, that I'm trying, that I'm not going to hold myself back from developing and refining what that looks like just because I fail, right?
yeah,
My compassion and empathy, if it fails, it's an opportunity for me to learn. And I wholeheartedly believe in that because that's what I've used. That's how I've gotten to this position. That's how and I'm not saying position as in it holds merit. I'm saying position that I'm a little bit happier and better than I was yesterday. And I'm surrounded by people, peers, and those that I love, where that's not the same reflection, right? We may have came up together, but for whatever reason, right, they can't accept or receive what it is that I have to give, right? And then there's others who were like, can I just put you in my pocket? Can I just can I put you in a Pokeball and you be Like, could we do in reverse? Can I be the Pokemon, but you be the trainer and I keep you in the Pokeball? And when I need to be trained, you come out and you just grow and then you train
Ooh,
me, right? Like I've literally
ooh.
had people say that, like, "Oh, I see you as my motivational speaker," right? Because I see the potential in people. I see who they are. I see them for who they are. I don't see them through the different scopes of what the world projects on them or what they project on themselves. I just look at them as whole as I can, right?
Same,
And then I
same.
reflect that as best as I can back to them so they know they're seen, that they're heard, that they're felt, right? That their presence is being enjoyed, right? And I mean, I'm not saying it's for everybody. Some people you got to really create distance and create space because they just not ready for that. But when you start to lean into that, you start to notice things change, things evolve. And I'm saying that to people because I see the pain, I see the hurt, I see the lack, and I'm extending not just an olive branch, but the tree. Get some olive oil. You know what I mean? It's good for you, right?
That's
But
right.
I'm saying that as me offering it, knowing that in the world we live in, it's not always frequent and often available. And I just as much as we use all these analogies and these metaphors to try and tell people like it's okay. We're gonna get through this, right?
That's it.
To be determined, to maintain that level of focus, even when it's hard, when it's tough, when it seems like you can't. You're gonna have those days. I have those days. I have I have my corners of the world that I go to find refuge and refuel, right? And I think it's important for us to talk about it, to speak about it, because it fosters the growth, it fosters the change. We talk about being inclusive, being diverse, having equity in the world, but if we don't talk about what's going on, what are we creating equity for? Right? Are we creating equity for the posture, the posing, the symbols? Or are we
Mm.
saying no, we're gonna actually nurture the tree, water the roots, make sure it gets what it needs so the fruit can grow. Hey, Figo Navarro came through on Twitch and said, I love you, I love you too.
Love you too,
Um,
bro.
it's lyrical ones versus everyone, and it's nothing but love. You know, he's saying in Twitch, Figo Navarro, people are losing their jobs for refusing an injection. Right, compassion and empathy. When we know that poverty has like, Figo came through. Figo. So the thing is, let's zoom out. Right,
Right,
poverty has been in existence
right.
for who knows how long. And going back to what Alfluence said around luck, some of us are lucky enough to escape it. Some of us are lucky enough to recognize. And now being in a place where we're constantly escaping it, we're constantly growing out of it, right? We're trying to acknowledge and identify how can others do it too. Oh, but wait, there's a curveball that came along in 2020. And we now are exceeding in exceeding ways how damaged the relationships are amongst our legal system, our political system, our medical and healthcare systems, our
Right.
financial systems, where now we say we don't have the infrastructure. Because remember, this is what it was. It's not just we don't know what it is, we also don't have the capacity to deal with the surplus of sick individuals in this world, right?
That's
We've
right.
gone on for so long as a sick nation, right? Because healthcare isn't free. Healthcare is driven through the capitalistic standards of making money. It's for profit, right? So there were people who, I mean, I had an auntie die, right? Because it was hard for her to sustain financially her own health, right? So this isn't new, but it was happening at such a rapid rate that we didn't have the capacity to say we're going to take on all of the sickness, all of this impending doom because we don't have enough beds, we don't have enough materials, we don't even develop products on our own in our own country that we need, right?
Right.
We're going to shut down the borders, but guess what, a lot of the materials we need are coming from other countries, right? So we're not even self-sustained, right? We pride ourselves on made in America, and then we find there's a lot of things not made in America, right? Things we need to survive. So what do? We rush and we scramble, right? We say we're going to make an exception this one time and we're not going to follow the rules we set. The people who make the rules are now telling us, yeah, the rules that we set, we're not going to follow them because we're trying to stop this surplus, this surge of people dying. We're trying to save lives. And this is one way we're going to do it. We're going to use a technology that a technique we've never used before, right? That's very unfamiliar and new. We're going to do it in an unprecedented time where everyone has access to information and to see different people's perspectives, right? And we already have a horrible relationship to all these systems that are telling us, yeah, we need you to take this shot. We need you to get this done, right? Now, I'm not trying to say anything around disinformation. I'm just saying what I've seen in my experience. And if you agree, I mean, you do. If you don't, by all means, I understand. But it
Right.
has to be said because someone is watching and saying people are losing their jobs. So now people are further diving into poverty because they don't have faith, trust, they don't believe in, because the years of trauma, the years of experience has only crystallized their perspective, hardened their perspective to now you can't chip away fast enough to get them to even think this is a viable option. That
Right.
what it means is I'm now not going to do this thing and put myself in harm's way even more because again, going back to what we said earlier, right? You should do this. I can't be the one to say you should do anything because I know you should be able to eat. You should be able to be safe. You should be able to pursue your dreams. You should be able to be happy. But unfortunately, just as much as you should do this thing, your other shoulds aren't fulfilled, right?
Right. You
You
should
should
break.
be able to have a piece of land. You should be able to have ownership over something. You should be able to have agency. You should be able to have control over your time. But really, have you ever?
You
Right?
should be able to sit for an hour quietly without thinking about your safety or the threats around you.
Right? You should, right? You should be able to have access to clean drinking water, right? You should be able to live off the land without the impending threat of it being destroyed or having it be filled with toxins and pollution or having it altered for profit, right? You should. Yet now, because we want to get back to normal, you should get this shot, right? And what has normal been for some people, right? It's very likely that for 90 million people, the normal they were living in was hell. The normal they were living in was minimized, invalidated, and ridiculed as not worthy of consideration to change anything, right? But 90 million saying we're going to hold out from doing this thing. I said I'm one that went and got the shot and said I'm going to risk my biscuit in this way. I cannot fault people for deciding to do differently because society is trying to dictate how we should engage, right? Going back to what you
Right.
said, kids
Yep.
should be able to come together. Kids should be able to convene and socialize. But we have enabled society to say school is the only way, even though we've already seen school is not the only way.
We
School
just
doesn't,
proved it. We just proved that school's not the way, not the only
right?
way.
And it's already been proven because you look at the rates, right? You look at you were just speaking on it, right? You had a principal, a leader who had gotten the school to be unified and recognize and critically think and understand what it means, and then what happens? For whatever reason, that leader is now gone. And what happens? Violence is introduced into the space because you now have no leadership, no direction, no guidance, right? And that oftentimes is the case. There's high schools where they start to incorporate yoga or meditation, and then the violence is decreased, right? But then what happens? Someone else comes in and they don't want to uphold that anymore, and now you have chaos. We start to allow people into the space who cause harm, and now you're in a situation of disarray, right? And then you got people being judgmental instead of being compassionate about people not wanting to get a shot. I don't hear compassion. I've heard people say, "Man, I was about to go off on this person and throw
Hmm.
hands because they
Right.
they were talking about how they don't want to get the shot." And I'm like, "Man, we at that point now where you even think it's okay to declare that violence is an option because someone is insecure and does not have the same relationship you do to the healthcare system, because that's the root of it. That's the reality. People have a lot of distrust, right? People lack a lot of faith, right? We have somebody who came into office, was saying all these great things, and then when we get in there, we're reminded, it's kind of business as usual. They have already gotten back to normal. And now they want to push back to normal on me when I've had a year plus of nothing being normal, of normalcy looking nothing like the such. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? As a person who understands there's a severity and there's a lot of threat to my life
Right.
already. I mean, I told you I come from a family where my relationship to the healthcare system is little next to zilch, because I've had to advocate for what I've needed to every doctor I've had since I've become an adult. Right? I don't have the same relationship and the same history as you do. I did it out of a survival, that was purely survival, to just say I'm gonna get this shot because I don't want to hear nothing. Because I know if y'all try to implement anything that does not grant me access, we're gonna have one less conversation because I did it. I didn't do it with a smile on my face. I literally had the person who gave me the second shot tell other people not to get the shot.
Hmm.
The person who administered the shot to me was preaching about not getting the shot. So no, I wasn't happy when I went and did it, right? I had to sit there and feel like, man, I might have made a bad choice, because the person who's serving and administering it to me is now minimizing and invalidating the fact that I did it,
Yeah.
right? But I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna get angry. I'm not gonna sit here and get upset. I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna learn from it, because that's all I can do, right? Because I'm not going to sit here and threaten and antagonize him. He already has made up his mind. He feels the way that he feels, and he has every right to, because he's witnessing them, whoever they are, say that we're going to make an exception for the rules given the situation, because we're not talking about making more hospitals, right? We're not talking about having a better capacity. We're not changing our relationship to healthcare. We're not saying we're going to change our curriculums within schools, and we're going to incorporate much more intensive and intricate forms of education around healthcare. So that way, we're kind of creating a generation of doctors and educated individuals who can make better informed decisions, so that we can avoid these situations in the future, because now people are empowered with knowledge.
You talking
No,
about
we're not saying that.
solutions? Talking
Right?
about
Oh no, I got to
solutions.
be careful. That's why I'm wearing a mask. You know what I'm saying? I got the gold teeth. All I want is a Range Rover. Give me the swimming pool, and give me all the things that most typical rappers would like, that help distract from the solutions. Because this is just gibberish. I'm a guy with gold teeth. What I'm saying doesn't make sense, right? It's not a solution. But going back to it, right? When I talk about the catch-all, and I talk about, even taxes, right? We talk about financial insecurity. We talk about poverty. We don't educate around the things that we need. We educate around things that create this filtering process of
For
who's lucky
distraction.
enough to be able to get through, who's able to break through, because it's not all of us, right? I'm not talking about a color, right? Ignore any of the colors, ignore any of the other adjectives or the other pronouns that you could think of. I'm talking about people. I'm talking
Right.
about people who don't have access. I'm talking about people who lack trust and lack faith. I'm talking about people who are often forgotten or feel like their voice isn't being heard. I'm talking about people, right? Because I see the people, I hear the people, and I feel for the people, because they matter. They mean a lot to me. I love them. I appreciate them, regardless of their choices or what they decide to do. I, like I said, there was a rule in place, or better yet, there was a lack of a rule. Me being a person who's vaccinated, there was nothing saying, as an asymptomatic person who could be infected, there's no requirement for me to get tested, even though I will, because I want to make sure that I'm not passing along something to a vulnerable family who doesn't have a good relationship with the healthcare system, because they're like, I don't trust the shot. I don't trust the government, right? They done locked up so many of my family members, or put me in a predicament where I'm not lucky enough to feel like I have a shot, to have a chance. Now they want me to get a shot so I can participate in this, but you never wanted to help me out any other time. So why are you now thinking I'm going to help you out? Right. So for me as an individual, I'm like, okay, I don't even want to put that person in harm's way. So I'm going to go and get tested, because there's nothing in this report, there's nothing in this rule book, there's nothing in these policies and procedures that says, oh, well, you can just go back to work as usual. Right? You could just operate as though nothing happened, even though I can pass along I don't want to be that. I don't want to do that. Right? I'm going to take agency and I'm going to communicate to my supervisors and to leadership and to everyone else. Look, this is what I plan on doing regardless of your policy, because I do not want to be impacting any type of harm on anyone. I don't wish that, don't want it, don't look for it. But people who rush back to normalcy, I say it again, slavery used to be normal, right? And I say that because, yeah, it sounds severe and maybe it's exaggerated for some, but it goes to show that there has been time periods where there is a normal that is disadvantaged, exploitative, hurtful, disruptive, or just downright disrespectful to human existence in so many different capacities, right? We have people in poverty, regardless of what they look like. We have people who lack compassion and empathy and education, regardless of what they look like. And all I'm trying to do is provoke just a little bit, stoke a little flame, get you to think a little bit differently, take some ownership of what you can take ownership of, and articulate, communicate, or know that you have an ally in your struggle. So I'm just saying, right? As Figo has said it, as he brought it up to our attention, we see you, we hear you, and we're trying to create a safe space for those to have a discourse so we can have more faith, so we can have more trust, and we can have a more healthy future. So, Affluent, you got any thoughts for the people?
I think respect for self and respect for others um, can be generalized and like misappropriated um, based on people's experiences and um, their upbringing, and a lot of times those things in relation to line up. Same thing with with uh with love. Same thing sometimes, even with compassion, they are sometimes relative. But I think with empathy, regardless of what people have been through, being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, being able to hear someone else hurting and relate to that hurt, be impacted by that hurt the same way you would be impacted by their joy. Like the ability to do that is a skill set that we should all learn, not just for growth, not just for survival, not just to break away from norms, but so that we can all receive what we need and create a world, create a community, create a system that provides what we need. Sometimes those systems can just start with two people having a conversation and people willing to express their needs and people willing to empathize and say, you know, this is something that I can help you achieve or pursue. Um, and like it's so important to find out what those needs are, um, and whatever guidance people may need. You can always tap in with the lyrical ones. You can always tap in with us, um, and let us know that you processing some things and trying to move toward change in your life.
Well, I just like to say that you only get one shot, so don't miss your chance to blow. Let me stop. Anyways, dun 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 dun. Dun. That was probably like the most impactful part to me of that song is hearing Eminem harmonize with his like undertone, ad lib, background vocals. But I'm saying all that to take away from the fact that right now is a time where I'm hoping people can um, understand what does love look like in this new era, and how does, yes, that respect that you spoke of, how do we get to it? How do we create it? How do we define it? How do we expand it? Because it isn't really there right now. And I'm not trying to harm anyone in what I have to say, but I am trying to highlight the harm that is being done to people that I feel like don't have a voice, or it, oftentimes you become so frustrated and angry that it's hard to even articulate the pain that you're going through. And my empathy can recognize the pain that they're in, and so I'm going to speak on your behalf. And if I'm wrong for what I'm saying, let me know and I'll correct it. But as far as I can see, this is the reality that we're dealing with. So please, everyone, do your best to engage in some form of compassion, some form of empathy. Learn, understand, what does it mean for you. Know your limits within it, but exercise it, because it will grow. So, as we often like to do at this time, yeah, I mean, sometimes when I look at myself dance, it's not on beat with what I'm hearing, and so when I get off beat when I dance. So let's see how fast I get off beat.
One, 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 one.